We're fixing every team in 5 minutes-ish. We're starting in the NFC West. It's the Los Angeles Rams. First up, made it to the Elite Eight last year, losing in the divisional round to the Philadelphia Eagles. Probably gave them the best game of any team in the playoffs, certainly
Yeah.
score-wise. Gave them a good game. In a couple of years, Sam, of kind of resetting this roster, right? They went from go-for-it mode and F them picks, and we never pick in the first round. Now, all of a sudden, we are drafting a lot where they've always drafted a lot, but drafting high last year reshaped their defense, got younger. Matthew Stafford's still there, and that might be where we need to start. There's a lot of trade rumors around Matthew Stafford as he closes in on his 37-year-old season here.
Yeah, I think that's definitely where we need to start. These rumors are more intense this time around than they were last offseason. I think they existed a little bit last offseason, but like they're for real this time. And so I guess the first question we need to ask if we're like fixing the Rams is this substance? Like, are we actually dealing away Stafford? Because to me, that kind of feels crazy. I understand why it's happening in terms of, there's no more guaranteed money left on that deal after this year. We're basically entering effectively the last year of his contract. So it's sort of decision time with Stafford. If you want to get anything out of him, now's the time to do it. On the other hand, you weigh that against what you said before. This team gave the Eagles the closest game of anybody in the playoffs, not just the NFC, but including the Chiefs, who got wrecked in the Super Bowl. It's not inconceivable that this team could have won a Super Bowl this year if they'd, actually executed that comeback at the end of the Eagles game, if they'd been able to get past Washington in the NFC Championship game, and then who knows if they'd have beaten the Chiefs or not. But this team was not a million miles away from another championship, and that's with this young defense sort of just starting to hit its stride. Pair of rookies effectively on the defensive line dominating. Okay, you've got the usual roster turnover and churn in any given offseason, but you're looking at this and saying this is not a rebuild. We're not miles away. We don't have to reset this thing. If you only have a limited amount of time left with Matthew Stafford, there's nothing that says, right now, 2025 can't be the year, right? If you have one more year left, let's go.
I think a lot of this has to do, though, with when a guy's in his late 30s, the conversations are being had, right? Remember, there was rumors that the Patriots were trying to trade Tom Brady in his late 30s, or trying to figure out, they drafted Jimmy Garoppolo. They were figuring out the off ramp, right, to their current late 30s starting quarterback. I think that's what's happening with the Rams. I don't think they're shopping Stafford. I think they're listening, and I think, and that's the point. And they're listening, and there's a lot of desperate teams around there, right? Now, the problem with this one is if the Rams do trade Stafford, then they become one of the desperate teams. Then it's like, all right, you've got this young nucleus of a roster on both sides of the ball, the Puka Nakuas, Jared Verses, and Kobe Turners of the world. Well, who's leading the ship here now? So I think at the bottom end of the day, I don't think it happens, but they're listening, right? And if the right offer comes along, or the right, a Steelers team or a Raiders team or whoever it is desperate enough to, give up a first rounder, whatever it might be, maybe that ends up being the way it goes.
Even a first rounder, though, because what you're doing if you accept any of these deals, or any of these offers that is potentially being put on the table, is you're voluntarily, joining the teams that don't have any pathway through to a Super Bowl, right? Ultimately, the Rams sort of, you can debate just how all in they went with the Stafford deal the first time around, when they got their championship. But whatever their strategy was at that point, they went for it. It paid off. They got a championship. And it's like, well, that's sort of the ends justify the means, right? No matter what they did in terms of potentially mortgaging some future or taking gambles, it all paid off because they got that championship. You would do that again this time around. Let's go with one more year of Stafford, even if it means we're sacrificing, draft picks that we could get back in return, because there is a real chance that this team could win a Super Bowl in 2025. The alternative is, all right, value for Stafford right now. Let's say we get a first round. Let's say it's a mid-first round pick from somebody. You take that deal, but now what? Now you have no shot at any quarterback realistically that can win you a championship next year, right? There isn't one of those out there. Are you immediately in the Sam Darnold sweepstakes, and do you think Darnold can do that with this team? I would doubt it. Are you suddenly in the Aaron Rodgers thing, who's even older and just would be free
That
as opposed
that
to
rumor's out there.
in,
That
right
rumor's
in
out
terms
there
of draft
already.
picks? Or are you like, we basically immediately punt on 2025, we're rebuilding and we're trying to find a quarterback in future? I just don't like, I don't see the end. I don't see the end purpose of trading him away, even if theoretically, on a ledger somewhere, a first round draft pick is great value for a guy at 37 years old, reaching the end of his contract, etc.
I think part of it is that they have him through 25 and 26, and part of it is he's making about 40 million per year. This current contract, 40 million per year. It's about middle of the pack now in APY, when it was pretty nice back in
Right.
2022. So I think that's part of it as well. Whether Stafford wants to be invested in for another year or two, or through his 39 or 40-year-old season, I think that might be a part of it as well. Let's make the assumption, though, we're in charge. We're playing Les Snead here. We're going to stick with Stafford and build around him. Yeah.
But even if you don't want to, even if you don't want it long term, I don't see the purpose in trading him away now, even for a first round draft pick versus just playing out the year. Like, if you assume it's a 1 year, one and done deal, like this year is the last year of Stafford, and then next year we have to cut him, whatever. I still think that 1 year with Matthew Stafford, where you think you have a realistic chance of actually contending, is worth more than trading away that capacity, but having a first round draft pick in a way, like in a year where it probably doesn't get you the Stafford replacement. Like, I just don't see the purpose of that, even if theoretically it's profit, or it's the, if it's the sound analytical strategy. It's all ultimately supposed to lead you to a championship. And I don't see your pathway to a championship by doing that.
Yeah, especially with the way things finished last year. They were one of the hottest teams in the
Right.
NFL. They win their first playoff game, win the division. They finished great, man. And look, 2022, just to back up a little bit, 2022, coming off the Super Bowl, not a good season. They had a ton of injuries. The go for it was like, all right, maybe we're going to reset here. 2023, they did reset. They find Puka Nacua. They find Kyron Williams breaks out. Stafford looks rejuvenated in 23, and then in 24, 4 draft picks on the defensive line. Jared Verse hits, Braden Fisk, second year of Kobe Turner. This is post Aaron Donald retirement too. How are they going to handle retirement? Well, Jared Verse is going to come in and be the clear defensive rookie of the year. So they head into next year without a ton of starter needs, so to speak. I think there's a couple places on defense they need to replace. They need a left tackle, and they have to figure out what to do at receiver. Cooper Kupp, they've already said, is on the trading block, so let's assume Kupp is getting flipped for somewhere. So to me, it's receiver and tackle where we want to start here for the Rams, and how they're going to make sure those spots are in good shape heading into next season.
Yeah, tackle as well, because one of the underrated potential free agents is Alaric Jackson, their left tackle. So what seemed like a weakness on paper for years of this team actually ended up being pretty good. But now that guy's hitting free agency. I mean, I've been talking about Jackson as a guy that a lot of teams should be targeting in free agency for the same reason. I think the Rams should try and keep him, in the building. Don't let him hit the market.
You want to start with that then? Let's re-sign Jackson, right? He's at that point where offensive linemen tend to make that switch. And if they're going to become good like that, that was a good season where he's coming off a career year, and that generally projects well going forward for an offensive lineman.
It's always it's a tough thing to project, right? When you're looking at offensive linemen or any position really. And on the one hand, the curve is going upwards, like the graph. If you're trying to project out this guy's development is exactly the way you would want to see it, right? It's nothing but good news. It's all going forward. So you're like, well, that means he's going to continue that ascent, and away we go. It doesn't always work that way, though, and he might have but the flip side of that coin is it means you're also only really dealing with the most recent year as the good one, right? Whereas the rest of the stuff has not been as good. So if you look at that and say, well, he is developing, he's going to be the guy, he's going to be good going forward, great. Let's hand him a decent contract. Let's keep him in the building. It's all good. The risk, of course, is that you are dealing with basically 1 year of good play as a sample size. And if you have to commit, high-end starter money off the back of 1 year of evidence, that's always risky. But for consistency's sake, if I think he's a good option for teams to chase in free agency, he's a good option for the Rams to keep him. The first wave of free agency is keeping your own players. I would not want to let Alaric Jackson out of the building if I'm the Rams.
All right, well, let's make that move. And then I had a suggestion from someone else, my Morgan Moses binky that I always lean on. There was a suggestion from somebody that Demarcus Robinson should be that next guy, like a cheaper wide receiver option who seems to have, I don't want to say figured things out, but man, has he been far more consistent. I mean, Stafford throwing to Demarcus Robinson, like red zone weapon and everything the last couple of years. What about keeping him as a free agent, keeping him to complement Puka Nacua? I'm not saying as a 2. I would still want to have a better wide receiver 2 next to Puka Nacua, but Demarcus Robinson maybe as a 3, maybe keeping him in-house as well.
Yeah, I mean he's a good route runner, and Stafford certainly seems to trust him as a red zone weapon in particular. So yeah, like I mean, again, if you're building around Stafford, even if it's only for one more year, it's it's a sort of more sensible version of the Aaron Rodgers logic, right? Like whatever makes Stafford happy / comfortable is a good thing to be doing. So keeping your left tackle in the building, keeping his favorite red zone target, like these are all positive things if you've got Stafford there.
I think they're drafting at 26. I think receiver could be in play there, depending on how that board falls. I don't know how the league's going to feel about Matthew Golden from Texas if he ends up becoming a pretty good fit as a route runner to complement Puka. Value might be there at receiver. I don't love it. I tell you, left tackle definitely isn't, right. So going back to the Alaric Jackson thing, picking at 26, you're probably not drafting a plug and play left tackle, which is why it is more important for the Rams to get that guy in free agency, whether it is Alaric Jackson or somewhere else. I do think you can get the plug and play receiver 2 there potentially, or corner, right? So they've got a cornerback need opposite Darius Williams. Ahkello Witherspoon's a free agent. That is where the same guys that I mentioned for the Bills and some other teams there, Siobhan Revell, Benjamin Morrison, these guys that are top 15 caliber corners who are coming off of injuries, could be there in the 20s. I think some team's going to steal a really good corner coming off injury in the 20s, and the Rams could be primed to fit that value and need at 26.
And even Darius Williams, as I told you the other day, is somehow like in his early 30s already. Like the Rams secondary definitely, I mean, there's some young pieces there, but corner I think is absolutely a position that they should look to bolster, reinforce, add depth, add succession plans, the whole bit. So yeah, I think tail end of the first round targeting corner for them would be huge. D-line would be the other spot, but with those 2 guys that were rookies last year with Kobe Turner there, like it's a strength already. There's never necessarily a problem with, keep loading up on what is already a strength, but it's certainly not like if you're trying to split the hairs in terms of like where's our need, that's the deal breaker. Like D-line is definitely not the need.
I think they're in the market for the big-bodied guy, right? It's Braden Fisk and Kobe Turner. They're more undersized, penetrating types. Kobe Turner can do anything along that defensive front, but are they in the market for the 360-pound Deion Walker, the Kenneth Grant guy? Everybody was making fun of you for mentioning Kenneth Grant for everybody as well yesterday, like my Morgan Moses. But Grant could be in play. But I think just getting a little bit bigger up front. I know the defense was outstanding down the stretch, incredible run. But there was a point in the season where they were getting beat up on, right? And the Eagles did run on them in the playoffs, and I think they probably want to be a little bit more stout up front. So I could see them getting one of those 340 to 360 pounders that are available in this draft as well.
The Deion Walker thing will be interesting though, like where he ends up going, because if he goes too high, it's a classic, like I'm terrified of that draft pick type of move.
Yeah.
But equally, like if he starts to slide because the overall body of work is not that great, like at some point he becomes amazing value because you're like, dude, the Bill Parcells planet theory, right? There's only so many humans walking the earth that look like that and have that kind of capacity to do things. So, and then obviously in the middle, it's like this is the appropriate level for that type of gamble. But that range, I think, is pretty significant for him. Kenneth Grant, I think, is a similar story, but a better, like every benchmark there is higher, in my opinion. He's just the baseline is better, the potential is better, all those things. But at some point, like it's a Walker's kind of the gamble for Walker is a fascinating debate.
One more position to just touch on is linebacker. Omar Speight did a really nice job down the stretch for the Rams, but a couple other free agents there. So one starter returning. I just want to throw out Dre Greenlaw's name as a guy within the division, right? We saw them trade Ernest Jones before the season, go with this youth movement at linebacker. I think Greenlaw is the other guy that, if you can buy low on him, coming off of injury back after the Super Bowl in 2023, man, I could see him being a huge piece. Where I didn't love the Rams linebackers, even though the defense came good in the second half. I think they could definitely improve there.
This is also a really, really young defense overall now. Like at some point, I wonder if they're in the market for one of those like 1 year rental, aged veteran type players. Like maybe that's like the Bobby Wagner mercenary role that's been going around for a couple of years now. Bobby Wagner is a free agent again, and maybe it's not Wagner, but maybe the Bucs let Levante David hit the market. But like one of those guys, this sort of stalwart, aged veteran that's been around, various different teams, can come in and sort of just play schoolmaster to this entire like youth movement on defense.
Yeah, I would love that. They tried the Wagner thing a couple of years ago, so I don't think they're going that specific route, but I think Greenlaw would be fantastic. So I think we fixed the Rams, man. We're going to keep Stafford, let the draft come to us, fill some needs at the right spot at receiver and corner, get some bulk up front on the defensive line, and bring in Dre Greenlaw. We're feeling pretty good.
Solid.
Rams going to go win the division once again.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.